you're doing some complicated stuff on ESPHome. What kind of stuff are you building? What do you?
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, I have a pretty good friend who's a professional brewer. So
Mhm.
I've been homebrewing beer for I don't know 10 or 12 years, and know him from the local brewery that he opened, and he has since left
Yeah.
there. But he came to me. I think it was like the beginning of 21. No, yeah, and he brought. I don't know if you've ever seen these little these PID controllers. A lot of breweries use these to control temperature for tanks, right? And it's great, except you got to be standing in front of it in order to do anything, even read it, right? And he said, "Hey, can we read these remotely?" Well, they're I looked at it and it has Modbus on it, which it's an old school automation protocol for industrial automation protocol, and we I sent him away. And 2 weeks later, texted him and said, I learned enough about Modbus to be able to set the temperature, read and set the temperature through Home Assistant. Um, and that was right as the electronics world fell off the cliff. Do you remember that? We couldn't buy a thing, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he was
Supply
he
chain.
was working to install this at somebody's brewery, and he couldn't buy controllers. So like nothing happened. So a year later, he comes walking in with another one, and he says, "Can you make this one work?" And it same thing. It was Modbus, but it worked differently. So
Mhm.
same thing, got it working. We actually deployed that a couple of years ago into a brewery nearby, and they were our test bed for a year. And then he wanted me to do it at the brewery he was working at, but he wanted to do it without those controllers. So I built something all with ESPHome that uses one wire temperature probes, and you just control. All you have to do is control a 24-volt DC valve that opens and closes the glycol coolant. And so so I learned to do that a couple different ways, but I'd never used the ESPHome before that, so that was a fun time. And that was all through 2024. I had left my prior employment at the end of 2023, and uh, since they asked me to leave, there was a lot of severance involved. So I spent 2024 not working and getting paid, and so I used it. I invested all that time into this, and so it was very interesting. So we wound up with a product that we use. I mean, we there's this manufacturer in China that makes these great uh, ESP32 devices, and so that will run 16 tanks, and so we have installed in I don't know almost a total of 5 breweries now, and
Okay.
it's an interesting thing because along with temperature control now we're starting to do gravity. So they make these devices that it's show and tell time. They make these devices that you put in the tank, and they're sensitive enough. The accelerometer is sensitive enough to measure changes in liquid density, and
Okay.
so we can pick that up. It uses Bluetooth, comes out of the top of the tank. We can pick that up with a Bluetooth proxy, report it back to Home Assistant. They get that on their dashboard too. And then we've done a pressure thing as well. So we can help them control pressure and fermentation, which is a whole nother thing. But yeah, so I spent today trying to get some very old proximity sensors working on a project that I'm working for a small homebrew shop here, and finally got that working today. So that's very interesting. So I'm refurbishing it for them, and so I had to get these. Uh, uh, they're just photoelectric cells that
Yeah.
essentially are solid state relay. So anyway, it works pretty interesting. Like, yeah, so I do
That's
a lot
awesome.
of that, and then there's just my home, and the home stuff is just as complicated, right?
So that's cool. So you've made a whole business out of this. It sounds like, and it's a nice like you said, it's like, hey, I'm not working anyways. Might as well do something productive with that. You learned a new skill, and you not a new skill. I guess you had the skill, but it's specific application of that skill, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you knew electronics, but you didn't
Sure.
know
Yeah,
beer
I
electronics. Let's call it.
yeah, I was an absolute noob when I touched this. Like I know
Yeah.
some concepts, but every step of the way was a question. And you ask on the ESPHome Discord, and I
Yeah.
always feel stupid afterwards. Not that they're trying. It's like, I should have read that too. It's just sometimes it's bad, but there's a lot though.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot there. Yeah.
But that's awesome.
So
That's really cool. It's a great way to make money on the side too.
yeah, it's we do it. We My goal. So these small, I don't know what you know about the U.S. brewing industry, but in the 70s, there were like 50 breweries in the United States, and as of 5 years ago, there were like 9,000. Right, so this craft beer just exploded, and numbers are starting to consolidate a little bit. But these small brewers have no data about their beer if they don't collect it manually, right? So they can get the temperature, and that's great. I'd like to give them a chart that showed them the temperature, right? And if something happens over the weekend, they don't happen to be there because it's a small brewery and they might want to be off on the weekend. They get an alert that says, "Hey, something happened." And the same thing with the gravity. Like they go in every day and they test it. And like, what if we just recorded it for you? Would that be close enough for what you need? And so I'm just trying to give these brewers data so that they can understand why the quality of their beer is the way that it is. So a lot of them, they just think they got to spend $100,000 to get this data, and we're trying to do it an order of magnitude less than that. No, 2 orders of magnitude less than that. So we want to make this accessible. Now I can only work in Eastern Pennsylvania because that's as far as I'm willing to no, I love to travel, but I can't support it. So, but it's been fun.
So when you're going ahead and going into these breweries, are you installing a local home assistant instance in the brewery as well, like running in a office somewhere that then connects to all these sensors, or have you got like a master node somewhere on your premises that feeds it?
Yeah. So the way that I do it is we put in a not sensitive box, right? Help me out, I'm losing a
Like
word
an
here.
IP rated box.
Water
Yeah.
resistant box. Yeah. And in that box, I mount this controller and I mount a Home Assistant instance Home Assistant. I've been using yellow, whatever works. And whatever other electronics and power stuff that we need. There's usually a smart switch in there so I can restart some things. Um, and it gets connected with Ethernet. I put a little box usually above the tanks that has a small ESP device in it that can do the proxy stuff, but I also connect the tanks up to that because one wire is a little sensitive with very long distances and disparate. It's not easy to work with, but it's nice and stable. And then I run PoE to that from the box that we put in. So it's a little bit of like hub and satellite thing, but they get a full standalone instance. Their data is on that box. Of course, it's backed up. They have their own cloud, Nabocasa cloud account, so it can be accessed remotely. That's the only thing that's cloud in this, right? Because we want the data to be there. We want everything to be locally, and I tell them, if you want to take this over, it's yours, right? If you don't want me around anymore, you can take it and run it. All your data is right there. I'm not locking you into anything. So fortunately, you guys aren't available to take that business away. So you need to find a good home assistant guy if you want to do it, but it's absolutely there. And I don't want to play those games, right? I want it to be open to them and accessible and whatever works.
Yeah, that's and so I know we're recording this. I think a couple of weeks ago, Home Assistant announced they're stopping production of the Home Assistant Yellow. Have you decided, or are you thinking about like what hardware then you'll replace the yellow with? Would you go to something like a green, or is that not powerful enough for what?
Yeah, what I run into is for some devices, the config's complicated enough that it can crash if there's not enough RAM. And so I was just thinking about this the other day. I think I'm going to go the mini PC route, right? Because these little, I don't know, I have a B-Link that I picked up from Amazon, and I can put 8 gigs of RAM in it, and that'll be more than enough for what I need. But I think, and that was the beauty of the yellow, was I could get a Pi CM4 with 8 gig on it, and I knew I wouldn't have an issue, right? So, yeah. So we haven't decided, but I have to decide shortly because another install starting next week. So.
Yeah, that's cool. And how does the process look like for an install? Like, are you then go out to a brewery and say, okay, you've got, and you'll have to see, I'm not a beer drinker, so I
That's
don't know
okay.
the terminology, but you've got a few tanks here. Okay, I need to put up these connect controllers here. I can go into the office here. I need to run PoE. Like, are you doing a full end-to-end install, or are you looking at what existing infrastructure they've got and then tying that into Home Assistant?
Yeah. So, uh, that first brewery, we tied into their existing PID controllers,
Yep.
and I could do that and retrofit. But the problem is that each of those controllers then requires some research to make sure I know how
It's
to
a
make it
lot of
work.
effort.
Right. Yeah.
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 And plus, we try to stay current on Home Assistant. And so the reason I have this one here is because I just took it off of my test instance sitting over here, right? Attached to an old Pi 4. So if I do a different device, I'm going to need a copy here. And so it gets pretty complicated. So I'd rather just install from scratch. And so, typically the process is I show up, I do a walk through a site. I do a site visit and, get some sense of distances and, work with them to figure out where we're going to put the main box. I'll need power there and I'll need an Ethernet drop there. I'll offer to do that if we need to. I'm not an installer. Like, that's not what I did in my career. But, these breweries, pretty easygoing typically. And so, uh, once they do that, I come back for a couple weeks, do some work, getting things set up, probably get 50% of the setup done, um, from the back end side, and then go on site and start hanging things and running wires. It could be more efficient, right? And so if I was
Yeah.
going to a place that was 60 or 70 miles away, I'm going to do a lot more up front here, so that
Yep.
I'm not and making 100 trips over there. They're just going to cost money that's not going to get reimbursed, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I do the whole thing. I do the whole thing myself. Hang the boxes, run the wires, make the connections, and then when they're, typically I'll ask for one tank that I can work with, and so when they're comfortable that that's working, right? Because here's the thing: is it's their
Yeah.
beer, and if it gets ruined, it's their money, right? And so,
It's all of it. Yeah.
I need their trust. And so, hey, here's the app. Here's what it looks like. We're going to cut this tank over. Play with it. Maybe use water, whatever. And so make sure that it's working okay, and then we can move forward with cutting the other tanks over. It's not a long process, right? I literally am removing temperature probes, swapping temperature probes, and then I make 2 connections to the valve up top. But yeah, so yeah, I'm absolutely doing it myself, which is going to limit how successful I'll be at this.
No, but
Yeah.
as long as you're passionate about it, right? Like, I mean, and
Yeah.
as long as it's, I think you said you were retired now, so you can
Yeah.
now, this is
Yeah.
literally some beer money for you, right? Like, you can go
Exactly.
around and,
Beer money.
you know, put these in tanks and also keep up with the latest things in ESPHome and Home Assistant. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're enjoying it. The people in the brewing industry tend to be good people. And so, like, that's the best part, is just like you get to know somebody new, learn what they're passionate about, share a recipe with them, talk about what they're brewing and why they want to. And it's just, it's fun. They're good people and, fun to be around.
Yeah.
Yeah.